The sun was just beginning to set, casting a warm golden glow across the thick canopy of the jungle. The sound of the cicadas began to rise, a persistent hum that filled the air, while the rustling of leaves and the occasional screech of a distant animal reminded everyone that they were in the heart of nature's most untamed corner. The jungle, ancient and ever watchful, was alive with energy. A small, ragged camp sat at the edge of a clearing. The crackling of a fire was the only sign of human presence in an otherwise untouched world. Around the fire, a group of travelers sat silently, each lost in their own thoughts. Among them was a man in his mid-30s, rugged and weather-beaten, his face lined with years of hardship. His name was David, a former journalist turned explorer. His journey had begun as an escape, but now it was more than that. It had become a search for something far greater: truth, redemption, or perhaps both. David stared into the fire, the flames dancing in his eyes as if whispering secrets only the jungle could understand. He had heard the rumors, the stories of the jungle's silent witness, a presence in the deep forest that no one truly understood. Some called it a spirit, others said it was a curse. But David was not one to believe in folklore. He needed facts, something concrete. That was why he had come. "Are we sure this is the right place?" a voice interrupted his thoughts. It was Sarah, a seasoned biologist who had been with David on several expeditions. Her face was framed by curly hair that hung messily around her shoulders, and her eyes, though tired, gleamed with determination. She wasn't easily swayed by superstition, but even she couldn't deny the strange occurrences that had been happening ever since they arrived. David exhaled slowly, glancing over at her. "I'm sure," he replied, his voice steady. Yet something in his tone betrayed a flicker of doubt. They had been tracking the sightings for weeks now, and every step deeper into the jungle had only raised more questions. "This is where it's supposed to happen. Tonight, we'll know." Sarah frowned, but said nothing, her gaze drifting to the thick trees that loomed like sentinels around them. The fire crackled, sending a shower of sparks into the air. The jungle had a way of making you feel small, insignificant. But it was also beautiful, alive in a way that demanded respect. A shadow moved at the edge of their camp, catching David's attention. He stood abruptly, his hand instinctively reaching for the machete strapped to his side. The others followed his gaze, tension building in the air. "It's probably just an animal," Sarah said, though her voice wavered slightly. David nodded, but he didn't relax. There was something about the jungle tonight, something unsettling. A presence. They all felt it. The air felt heavier, thick with anticipation. A sudden howl pierced the air, the scream of an animal in distress. The group froze, the jungle seeming to hold its breath in the moments that followed. It was a sound they hadn't heard before, a sound that didn't belong. They exchanged uneasy glances. "We need to move," David said firmly. "We have to find the source of that sound." They packed quickly, grabbing what they needed from the camp. The jungle was already closing in around them as they moved, the shadows growing longer with each step. The moonlight barely filtered through the thick canopy above. Their footsteps were muffled by the dense undergrowth, but the air was alive with the constant sounds of life, chirps, calls, and the rustle of unseen creatures moving through the brush. As they ventured deeper, the world around them seemed to change. The sounds of the jungle grew quieter, almost as if the forest itself was holding its breath. The further they walked, the more they felt the weight of something watching them. Something ancient. David stopped suddenly, raising his hand to signal for the group to halt. He had heard it. A whisper. Soft, almost inaudible, but unmistakable. It was the jungle itself, speaking, if only in its own way. His heart pounded in his chest as he strained to listen. "Did you hear that?" he whispered. The others nodded, though none of them spoke. The jungle's silence was deafening now, and with every step forward, it felt as though they were being drawn into something much bigger than themselves. As they continued, the dense jungle opened up to reveal a clearing, an ancient stone structure half hidden by vines and moss. The air grew colder as they approached, and the whisper grew louder. Not in words, but in a sense of urgency, as though the jungle itself was trying to warn them. David stepped forward, his boots crunching on the dry leaves beneath him. He reached out, brushing his fingers against the cool stone. The walls were etched with strange symbols, half erased by time. Something about the place felt both familiar and alien at the same time. "This is it," David said, his voice filled with awe. "This is the silent witness." He didn't know what he expected, but as the moonlight filtered through the treetops, he felt a chill run down his spine. This wasn't just a structure. It was a message. A message from the jungle, from the past, perhaps from something more. Suddenly, there was movement. A figure emerged from the shadows. It was a woman, dressed in the traditional garb of the jungle tribes. Her face was painted with markings, and her eyes were wide with fear. "Run," she whispered urgently. "The jungle sees you." From here, we can continue with the story, building the mystery and exploring the strange events that unfold as they discover more about the silent witness. We can flesh out the characters, the environment, and the supernatural elements that weave through the narrative. If you like this direction, we can continue developing the script. Let me know how you'd like to proceed.